It's all it's all about, should I be using this thing for?
No,
No.
you're good. No.
It's all about, the potential power of youth, young people like you guys to make a difference in this, climate challenge we're facing. That's for especially, but, in any event, I'm really looking forward to hearing what they say, and I just wanted to make one comment, well, and a couple of comments. One is I'm a member of the Draft Climate Commission, which is how many people, 7, 9, something like that. We've been meeting for about 5 years. We try to figure out impactful solutions to climate change. Hey, Lord. And I think probably the main thing that we've done is create a climate action plan, a plan for the town, what the town can do and what citizens can do to address the climate problem. Right now, we're engaged in trying to figure out how to implement that plan, which is another challenge. We're trying to prioritize which actions make sense, which ultimately might be the most effective and most successful in dealing with the issue. But one thing we haven't focused on so much is the potential power of young people to make a big difference. And that's partly why we have these folks tonight to speak to us. So, thank you all for coming, and I'll let you guys introduce yourselves.
Yeah. So, if ever you can't hear me, my kids tell me all the time I'm really loud. So if you can't hear me though, just do this and we'll use the microphones. I am sensitive to people that can't hear very well. I'm an initiative.
Sorry about that. We'll have
It's all good. I started out in education. I worked with alternative education students, and where I was teaching agriculture, teaching construction, moved into environmental education when I moved back home. And it kind of what we were doing with students led to this organization. So everything that we've done through education and young people has led to what we're doing now. And I'll tell you a little bit more about that. Yeah, that's just me. I'm pretty simple.
Hi everyone, my name is Jackson Chadwick. I am the advocacy director at Maine Youth for Climate Justice, and we are a network of youth and young adults across the state of Maine who are advocating for climate justice, both in our communities and for state level policy. I have a background in community and political organizing. I've always had a passion working with youth and younger adults, and so that's kind of what led me to join Maine Youth for Climate Justice in 2024. And I'm really excited to speak with you all about some of the initiatives that our organization takes in.
Great. So if you want to advance and have the clicker to click on.
yes.
Jackson and I wanted to start with a one-on-one, and the background behind this is the Climate Initiative does have a community conversations protocol, and we were able to use this high school youth-led conversations with the town of Kennebunkport for 2 years about the flooding in their downtown and business district. And it led to a lot of decisions on how they were going to move forward, because the students were able to have these amazing conversations with town members with very little pushback, very little argument, nothing like that. So this is part of our protocol. We just find it's a great way to start any kind of conversation where we're talking about hard things, or talking about things that make us anxious, or talking about things that we care about. So what I'm going to ask you guys to do is to, this is going to make some of y'all really uncomfortable, is to pair up. But you're going to pair up with somebody you did not come with and somebody that you may not know very well. So look around the room, and if you know every single person in the room, just pick somebody. But if you don't know everybody in the room, maybe cross and then just pair up. You just need to have a person A and a person B. If we have an uneven number, one of us will join in.
I was doing it. I was making an annoying sound too if you keep just pressing it.
Maybe I'll go play with them while they're at it.
I guess we can start with that.
My dear partner, if you know this is where I get loud. What's your friend? If you guys can sit down, I have something very specific I'm gonna ask you guys to do. All right, so the first thing I'm gonna ask you guys to do is to take a second and just think, all of us have places in our community that we really love, whether it's a building, whether it's our house, whether it's down on the water, whether it's a tree, whatever it is that you guys have in your brain, like when you're really stressed out or you're, having a hard day, like where is it in your brain that you go in your community or physically go? So I want you to think about that for a second. I want you to think about what that place looks like. What does it feel like? What are the smells you smell? All of that. Whatever it is, think about that place in your community that you love. Okay, so I'm going to give you just a couple of seconds to think about that. You can write it down if you need to write it down. You can just think about it if you want. All right, does everybody have their place in their brain? All right, so here's how we're going to do this. Teachers are the worst. So you guys are going to be really good. They talk too much. All right, so what we're going to do is you're going to have one person be a person A, one person be a person B. You guys can decide. Doesn't matter. You're both going to end up doing the same thing, just different ways. You guys decide between your partner? Jackson's gonna come and join y'all, so you have to.
Yeah.
Person A.
I'll be A.
That's good.
Person A. Yes. Person A, what you are going to do, and I'll explain all of this after why I'm making you do this. Person A is going to talk for 1 minute. They're going to fill that entire minute. Person B, you are not allowed to talk at all. You can just sit on your hands. You can gaze awkwardly into their eyes, but you are to listen and do nothing else. You cannot speak. Okay? So I'm going to time you. So person A, you are going to explain that place, everything about that place that you can think of to person B. Are you guys ready? Person A, go.
Okay, so mine's actually printed. But it's a specific spot, so it's kind of on.
All right. That was pretty good. Usually when I do this with teachers, it's still tough. I can say that. All right. Okay. And now person B, it's your turn. You're going to just say in 30 seconds what you heard them say. Okay. So for 30 seconds, you're just going to tell the person what you heard them say about their place. Ready? Go.
I don't know if it's
Raise of hands from people A. People do a pretty good job. Give me a thumbs up.
Yeah.
Okay, good. All right, now person B, it's your turn. You're gonna talk for a whole minute. Person A, sit on your hands, gaze into their eyes, whatever you need to do, but you can't talk. Okay? So person B, it's your turn. Tell about your place. And now person A, it's your chance. You got 30 seconds to tell person B what you've heard them say. 30 seconds. Ready? And go. Just by curiosity, how did he do? Pretty good. Thumbs up. All right. So just by a show of hands, you can click to the next screen. I think it's just talking about some of the reasons. So how many people had a hard time not interrupting the person because they had something in common? Raise your hand. It's okay. Be proud. All right. Most of us have a hard time. More people usually have a hard time than not with not interrupting. It isn't because we're bad people. It's because we want to connect. At the end of the day, you're listening to that person. You're like, oh, I went to that place and I loved it. And it was really awesome. And oh my gosh. And then when I went there, but what happens when we do that is we hijack that other person's story and we take away from what their experience was by injecting our experience into it. So even though we mean well and we're trying to connect, sometimes it'll stop a conversation or will stop a thought process in the meantime. How many people had a hard time filling a whole minute? Yeah, young people, that's almost always the case. Some people just don't have a whole lot that they can think of on their feet in that moment, and that's okay too. Some of us are marinators, right? And so it takes a little while. And so when you're in a group conversation, just remember to look out for those marinators and make sure that they're able to add to the conversation. Because those of us that are really talky, like me, we can sometimes forget the marinators, right? So it's always important. You still have something really important to say. You just might take a little longer to get to it. Or you might just have fewer words to describe it. And that's totally fine. So we just want to make sure like we're seeing how everybody's communicating, right? How many people had something in common with the person that they talked to? Their places had something in common. I want you guys to look around and raise your hands. If you had something in common, I want you to raise your hand. So what was my question to you? My question was to find some place special in your community that you cared about and that meant something to you. So all those hands raised to me means that you're all coming from the same place because you all have some place in this community that you care about and that you're willing to do something about, right? So we have far more, if we come from this, from what our core value is, which is this thing that we have in common, this place that we care about, maybe different places, but they all have something in common, right? We come from that place of where we have things alike instead of where we might differ, because there's a million and one ways that we could differ. But if we always remember that our core thing that we're coming here for is to think about all those special places that we have in this community that we want to care about and we want to save. And so that's how we always start our community conversations. And believe it or not, there's also a tricky piece to this too. And that is when we're coming together to talk about something that might not always be comfortable, if we put you in your happy place to talk first, then you're like smiling and you're happy and then we're good. Instead of starting from the place of sadness or anything else. So you're welcome to go back to your regular seat if you want to, or you can stay next to the partner that you're with right now. It doesn't matter to me. But the core thing that I really wanted you guys to see is that everybody in this room had some place in this community that they cared about and wanted to see. Next slide. So the first thing, I always believe you start hard and then you get lighter as you go. And the first thing what got me into this work was really a couple of things, but one of the things that we started to notice was that there was a lot of anxiety amongst the young people that we were teaching. And I'll point out in the back corner there, slyly sitting, I'm going to actually be highlighting what she's doing later, but Melissa Lucci is one of the people who created the class and really part of the climate initiative with me. And part of what we were noticing was that students were dropping out of environmental science classes because they were like, well, if all I'm going to hear about is all of the problems and I can't do anything about it, then I don't want to be a part of it. And it led to a lot of anxiety amongst the young people that we were working with. And so there is this huge bit of anxiety, which Jackson will talk about. There's also something called the loneliness epidemic. Has anybody heard of that? So there's a loneliness epidemic. The Surgeon General in the United States has actually put out reports about this multiple times. 50% of people in communities say they have not spoken to somebody in their community that they don't know. They just don't talk to them because they don't know them. One in 3 adults feel lonely at least one time a week. And that's higher for youth. 30% of young people feel lonely at least one time a week. So that's like a really big issue. And one of the things that I like to talk about a lot, my dad is from Appalachia, my mom is from Bath. She grew up right here in Bath. And they grew up in small towns where their families had been for a long time and they inherited kind of their community. They knew who was working in what store, they knew the teachers, they knew the people running the community. My dad knew pretty much everybody and probably related to 3/4 of them. So I think they inherited their culture and their community, whereas now we're a lot more nomadic. How many of you guys are living in Bath in the same town that your grandparents grew up in? How about your parents? That tells you something, right? So we don't always necessarily know all the people where we're living. And it's created this disconnect and this untethering of our communities and untethering of young people and even adults, right? Not feeling connected necessarily because we're not inheriting that. We have to actually create that. So that's one of the reasons. And then I know you have some things about anxiety.
Yeah, I wanted to highlight that Maine Youth for Climate Justice recently partnered with students at Bates College in Lewiston, and we conducted a study of 162 youth across the state. And by youth, this is ages 18 to 30, so young adults as well. And what the study found was that over 1/3 of the participants in that study experienced some kind of mental health impact because of climate change or experienced climate anxiety in general. And that kind of mirrors what we're seeing at a national picture too, kind of alludes to the loneliness epidemic you mentioned just a minute ago. However, that same study found that climate change doesn't always prevent those students from getting involved in activism, right? And that's a really important thing to note, that sometimes what can bring us down can also bring us back up and lift us up. So I just wanted to highlight that as a positive example.
Yeah, and one of the reason part why I was excited to have Jackson up here, but also excited to talk is that when we can engage young people in their communities, the land they stand on, the things they understand that are surrounding them, it's a lot more engaging. If we continue to talk about everything that's happening in Bangladesh and your students are sitting in Bath, there's not a lot that they can do to be active in that. But if you're talking about the land beneath their feet, the river right down the road, you're talking about the things that they live in, breathe in, understand, then there are ways for them to achieve and actively be involved in the solutions. And so that's kind of where both of us have our feet planted here in Maine and abroad. I'm going to tell you a little bit about DCI first, and then Jackson's going to tell you about MYCJ. No? Yes? Okay. And I'm just going to tell you our origin story a little bit because this is where Melissa in the back comes in. That's where right there. But the Gulf of Maine Field Studies was created out of Kennebunk High School, and it essentially was what I said. We were seeing young people drop out of environmental science classes, so we wanted to create something that was a little bit different. And that was to bring this global issue of climate change down to the local level. And like I said, that gives you something achievable and accessible for you guys to get engaged in. And so we are a coastal community. Our business district is regularly underwater and is flooding pretty regularly at this point. And of course, that's a large part of the income of the community. So we started out with just a few problems that we wanted to solve. I was working for the Land Trust at the time. We have a Goat Island lighthouse. It was powered by an underwater cable and it was going to die. It actually has died now. And so we had the students figuring out whether or not we could get that off grid. It is now off grid. 6 years later, 5 years later, the cable failed in 4 years, and the work that the students did actually was what the trust used to move forward into renewable energy for this project. So it was all the work of the students that did this. They collected data, they did research, they presented to the trust, they presented to the town, they went to the state and talked about, because it's a historical property, what they could do. So this class was really created to bring the global issue down to the local scale. That caught the attention of a funder, and that created the learning, the climate initiative. And the things that we basically have two major programs. One is for educators, it's called Learning Lab, which these are our learning labs. And they are modules that fit into a regular classroom curriculum. They're linked to the SDGs. They're linked to the Sustainable Development Goals. Sorry. They're also linked to the Next Generation Science Standards, 21st Century Skills, all of those things. And then the other one is called the Climate Action Leadership Program, which is direct to young people. The whole point of all of these, it's the same scope and sequence as the Gulf of Maine, which is why I started there. Funny, not so funny, we got our money to start this organization right before COVID hit. And so everything that we planned on doing in classrooms, we could no longer do. So we made these modules that were digital. And because of that, we have now spread to where we're in all 50 states, we're in 50 countries. We have over 750,000 young people and about almost 6,000 educators now using these materials. Everything ends in action. So we call it going to camp. So you can either do communication, you can do adaptation, mitigation, or policy. All of these things are incredibly important. Young people have an amazing way of doing communication, which is, there's a great study out of North Carolina, and this must just be new because I certainly didn't have this kind of influence over my father, but apparently 7th grade girls have the most influence over conservative fathers. They can absolutely change their minds. I did not have that luck in 7th grade, but good for you guys. But they say that young people actually have a stronger chance of shifting the minds, the hearts and minds of adults than other adults talking to each other. I stand up, you guys are going to look at me and see what I do for a living. You're going to decide who I am, what I'm going to say, how I vote before I even open my mouth. It'll either start a conversation or end one before I even say anything. Young people have this beautiful ability to be engaged in conversations without that baggage. So you guys have a really powerful voice. You have a really powerful opportunity to make change. So we have our learning labs. We also have toolkits that people can use, and everything ends with action. Our whole goal is action. So I just wanted to highlight a couple that are happening in Maine. And this is Pam Morgan, Dr. Pam Morgan at the University of New England. We partnered with the University of New England for this class. It's now in Freeport and Kennebunk and the University of New England. So the students are getting dual enrollment credit. So this is part of that class, and TCI is now a partner. But University of New England, had anybody been to the University of New England? Okay, it's right on a marsh. So there's like this marsh that's right there in front of their student building, and it's slowly sinking into the river. And the students were noticing that. This is the marsh right here. You can kind of see it up there. And the students started noticing those changes, and they started studying this. So for 6 years, they've been taking data on how far back the marsh is moving and how fast. And the students have been part of designing and interviewing people, engineers, and getting grants written and ready. And they're building a living shoreline, which will be a model for the state. And students did this. Students did almost all the work for this. They hired engineers to come in through a grant to give them advice and all of that. But that is going to become an example for the rest of the state. And it's a student-led initiative in this state that happened. The other one is one that I talked about briefly a minute ago. We got a grant from the state to have students lead conversations within the town of Kennebunk and Kennebunkport. Those conversations started out the same way we started this one out, where you do the one-on-one, just kind of get people talking to each other. And then the students had sea level rise projection maps. And they broke the town into small groups, and they said, what do you know? What changes have you seen? What do you know that the town is doing? And what are your ideas to fix the problem? There was no like, it was just, what changes have you seen? Because frankly, it really doesn't matter. We're trying to look at solutions. We're very solution oriented. So these students spoke to over 200 participants and 32 youth facilitators throughout the year. And they held these conversations, and that's the town actually has acted upon the information that they collected. So the students collected information where the community really wanted to look at tide gates to see how much the tide of the Kennebunk River is really impacting this, and if we could figure out ways to stop the river from gaining so much water and flooding the town, or if there were ways to stopgap somewhere. And that's actually one of the things that the town just got the grant to do. So from this information sessions that the students did, they were able to push to get a grant for the town to be able to do this research, and the students are engaged in the research now. This is actually the downtown after a big storm. So you can see like, these are businesses, and this was about up to here on most people. So it flooded good 3 feet of most of the businesses in town, and they lost all of that merchandise, not to mention just the fixes to their buildings that they had. This is also our historic district. It's been there since, you know, when it got settled by the Europeans. So it just needs to, you know, people are trying to figure out how to save it and if they need to retreat. One of the most interesting things that happened was in the beginning, everybody was like, lift the town up. That was the main thing. People started coming back to these conversations over and over and over. And by the end, this was during the storms. How many of you guys remember the big storms in January 2 years ago? So after those storms, that happened in the middle of these conversations. And after those storms, people started coming to these conversations. And almost every time there would be one community member that would say, maybe we just need to accept that this is going to go away. So it really helped with the grieving process and the acceptance process for this community to be able to talk through solutions. And as they continued to talk through their solutions and realizing there weren't a ton, and how do we move forward? We're gonna have to move forward. There's not really a choice. So how do we do this together? So it's a really powerful way that youth can be engaged in a really meaningful conversation with the community members. Every single community member left these conversations. We always end them with what gives you hope. And they all left feeling like the students are giving them hope. One thing that we want to make sure and I urge you all to think about this, is we don't want to just like run up a bill and then hand the bill over to the young people. And a lot of times the way we talk about this is that way. We're like, oh, you guys are going to solve the problem. Meanwhile, I'm going to drive my dually down the road, right? So we've got to remember, it's not on you guys. You are going to have to help pay the bill, unfortunately. But working together with the adults, it shows that we really do have the right mind and heart. We do want to do the right thing by you and move us all forward. Engaging young people in this process is vital for them to see that, instead of feeling like we're running up a bill that we're just going to leave in the mailbox for them. Yep, there's Melissa. And this is her students in Freeport. I'm just going to say a minute because I talked her into coming. So if she wants to stand up and talk at all about what her students are doing, I would love for her to. But she went there, and in Freeport, they've actually been studying oysters because oysters clean the rivers. They also bring down the acidification. There's all sorts of reasons for studying oysters and shellfish. It's also a very burgeoning industry in the state of Maine, and a sustainable industry. Where many of our fisheries are starting to collapse. Unfortunately, our shrimp industry collapsed a long time ago. Cod industry is much smaller than it used to be. Our lobster industry, because of the Gulf of Maine is warming faster than any body of water its size on Earth. It is slowly moving, the lobster are moving further and further out and further north. So this is a huge industry for us. The fisheries are big industries. So we want to figure out, how do we buoy this industry and how do we save our fisheries, or at least give multiple opportunities for ways to generate income. And so these students are doing some of that. Do you want to talk about it at all? Give you a couple seconds.
Yeah. Melissa, hi, Newport High School. Our students, we actually have an educational oyster piece. And so we are cultivating 2,000 oysters. And my students are able to go out on the lease, work the lease, and this winter, we're actually going to go in and teach interactive lessons with the 5th grade class and the 7th grade class. And I don't know, but we're lucky because my assistant principal has a boat, and we partner with a local oyster farmer who also comes and gets us in South Freeport. But we're incredibly lucky. Community partners play such a vital role. And yeah, thank you.
And a student actually filled out the grant and all the lease information. It was not Melissa. The student took this on as their action project and was able to fulfill that. And now that's a learning thing for the students moving forward. And the other thing is that everything that we do at TCI, as well as in the Gulf of Maine Field Studies, is student-led. Because you guys have great ideas. You have great ideas. You think outside of the box. We're a little, I'm not gonna say I can be a little bit like, it didn't work last time. And you guys are like, so we're gonna try it again, and it works. So these are just things I want you to, down in this corner is a senior from last year who's doing a hemlock woolly adelgid project. So those of you that are in the conservation world understand that woolly adelgid is attacking our hemlock forest, which is a really important ecosystem in the state of Maine. And these guys are monitoring it for the land trust. And it's a class project that students took on. They've labeled the trees, they're monitoring the trees week after week. And they're actually adding to the information that the town has in order to try and mitigate and save the forests. So at the end of the day, I guess my message from TCI and my message for the town of Bath is really, students do amazing work, and they can do amazing work. And when they do that amazing work, when they're included in the conversation, they can make the conversation go further within the community, and they can also do meaningful work for the community to mitigate, adapt, to communicate. And it helps them to alleviate some anxiety. It connects community members, it connects generations, because we don't necessarily naturally have those connections anymore. And those connections are vital, not just for the youth, but for the people in the community. And then my last thing would be that it has to be done. And these are our next generation of the people who are going to be working in the solar fields, who are going to be working in conservation, who are going to be our environmentalists, who are going to be our teachers, who are going to be working in the electricity electricians, and we want them to have some kind of knowledge base and some kind of mentorship to be able to understand what are those jobs. And if they're not choosing a job that's in the green industry, they still can green the job they go to. We had a student that wanted to be in interior design, and after taking the class was like, oh, I can totally make this sustainable design. Yeah, you can. So it's not about making it perfect. It's about including all voices and bringing all voices to the table because they all matter. And these are the kids that are going to be living in your community, hopefully, for a long time. And we want them to feel tethered to this community and want them to feel like they can make a difference. So Jackson has a lot to say about policy and other things that they're doing, but I'd like to hand it over.
Thank you. That was amazing. So again, I'm from Maine Youth for Climate Justice, and we're a network or coalition of students and youth across the state, from some of Maine's more urban areas to some of our more rural and isolated areas. And we were founded in 2019. That was kind of the height of the national push for a Green New Deal. And youth climate activists in Maine wanted to take a similar approach state level and form an organization that would bring youth together on environmental and climate issues. So since 2019, we've expanded, still a small organization, we have 4 staff people, but we've been able to connect youth across the state with one another through both virtual and in-person programming. And one of the things we worked to do early on in our existence was to get a youth representative on the Maine Climate Council. And then we also worked a few years ago to pass a bill at the state level that would require the state to divest public pension assets from fossil fuels. So those are just a couple quick examples of what we've done, but we also have a lot of educational programming that we offer to students and just youth in general across the state. For instance, we have what is called a high school cohort, and this is a group of high school students that meet monthly, usually over Zoom, and it's just a way and a space for them to connect with one another and learn about what are you doing at your school? What am I doing at my school? How can we possibly, work together on some of these initiatives? And so that's an example of a program that we facilitate and provide support for. We also have something similar at the college level. We have what is called college cohort. So we have a group of students at the University of Maine up in Orono who do something similar, and we work with them to put on educational events on that college campus. But really, our mission is to support young people with their initiatives or with whatever opportunities they're seeking. And we do that through community organizing. We also do it through legislative advocacy, and then, as I mentioned, educational programming. And at the end of the day, we want to train the next generation of youth leaders to advocate for bold climate justice policies, both locally, such as in your town, but also at the state level. And I also wanted to mention one thing we do every year that brings youth together is we hold a Youth Day of Action at the Maine State House in Augusta. This is a photo from a few years ago, but some of these folks are still members of MYCJ. And the Youth Day of Action is a chance for youth to come together, participate in a rally, also to talk with their legislators about issues that are important to them or bills that they would like to see the legislature pass. And so it's always a really inspiring event, and it reminds leaders in Augusta that youth and young people are paying attention, and that they should be paying attention to us as well. Go to the next slide. Thank you. So I wanted to highlight one initiative that our members worked on last year in 2025, and this is called the Maine Green Schools Network. This was an initiative that was youth and student led. It was brought forth by youth. And really the basis for it was that students in particularly rural districts or rural towns across our state were noticing they didn't have the same access to educational resources around outdoor education or place-based learning or climate literacy that some of their peers had in more, say, urban or populated areas. And it's a hard thing because Maine is such a geographically diverse state, and what is being taught, say, in one school district in southern Maine might be vastly different than what is being taught up in Aroostook County, right? And so this is what kind of informed the Maine Green Schools Network to take place. It took place in the form of a bill. So students and young adults helped write a bill in the Maine legislature with the help of a couple legislators up on the screen. And that was introduced last year. It was entirely youth coordinated and was a way to uplift and offer more educational resources and opportunities to the existing efforts of students and teachers. So it's really a lot about resource sharing and communication. School districts aren't always talking to each other, for instance, especially, as I said, given that we are a very rural and diverse state, geographically diverse state. So, yeah, climate literacy, outdoor education, place-based learning, weatherization of public schools. These were some of the things that the bill was focusing on. And it was entirely youth-led. The public hearing was entirely youth-coordinated. And so members from Maine Climate Justice, we worked with our friends at the Maine Environmental Education Association and the Nature-Based Education Consortium to craft this bill, bring it before the legislature. Had a really great public hearing. We had about a dozen students come up to Augusta, testify in person in front of a committee of legislators, which is not always the most fun task, can be a little daunting. But these were mainly high school students, some college students as well. And it was really inspiring, and legislators listened and they recognized the need that, yeah, school districts across the state can communicate with each other a little bit more. There can be some more resource sharing. And so that bill passed the Maine legislature last year. It was enacted into law, and the Maine Green Schools Network is now part of the State Department of Education. And so they facilitate this network and still being implemented, but the goal is to eventually hire a staff person to help increase communication between school districts and to share more resources between them. Last year, they also held a Green School Symposium, which was another way of bringing youth together as part of the Green Schools Network. Yeah, and then the goal again was just to increase equitable access really to outdoor and place-based learning for all students across the state, regardless of whether they are in a more rural district or a more urban area.
Yeah, no, and I think the big thing about the Green Schools Network is it's about getting students engaged with greening the schools too. And so Glenn Cummings is heading that up. We're working with him. I know Peter from Citizens Climate Lobby is working with them, and there's a couple of other of us that are pulling together resources to really give kids the opportunity, students the opportunity, because greening schools is not just infrastructure, it's also education, it's green career pathways, and it's leadership. And so if you go onto the state website, you'll see they have a compass, and those are the 4 directions. And it's all about getting the schools, talking to the municipalities that have climate action plans. You live in a really great community that already has done this, that you guys have a climate action plan for your school, you have a climate action plan for your community, and how to get those 2 talking a little bit more and getting some youth engaged in that would be amazing. So after, this was just a quote that both Jackson and I thought would be really nice to put up there. And it was from an adult that attended one of the conversations. Apathy is the enemy. Being paralyzed by fear is the enemy. What brings me hope are these young students making energy out of fear as an opportunity to make massive changes in the way we live locally and globally. And I think that kind of sums up what Jackson and I are talking about with getting young people engaged and giving them a seat at the table, and not just a seat at the table, but a talking, voting seat at the table. So if you go forward, we want to leave you guys with something positive. I didn't know that was on a donate page. You don't need to look at that, but look at the
Wasn't sure if this was the video.
Sorry. If you want to make the screen big, this is just we went to New York Climate Week and we spoke to young people across New York Climate Week to see what gives them hope. Let's see, there you go.
Nope. Sorry.
Yes, you can.
Sorry. Let's go to.
I'm so sorry.
No. Figure this out. We'll just do this.
Yeah, let's just do that.
Okay.
Just
So the capacity of young people to be social change through innovation, creativity, critical thinking, regardless of the support of the system.
These were first stations. First, we will get together, unite, and fight for the future. Okay, so you have this the people, all the people, because this is a people's movement. So it's better to talk about and come down. So exactly the way that we come from. Exactly the way that we this next generation things. So that is the future of markets. But these people we see young people from across the world, including from Pacific Islands, pushing their leaders to fight vigorously and on issues of climate change and policy impacting their environment. And also urging the leaders to continue to fight to sustain our environment for generations to come. I think today's here. See,
Share a little bit about what Mount Ararat over in Thompson has done, getting educated about their green school. Our high school was built for this. I was on the school board and I worked for a year to educate folks about how the heating systems work in Mount Ararat, which is kind of like rats because it's geothermal with some backup heat pumps, operating and moving. And the furnace, the oil furnace is tiny and it's only for emergencies. We did, a student and I worked for a year who's now in engineering school in Syracuse to figure out how this building worked. And when did it get geothermal? And how deep those 50 wells that were down 500 feet, bringing up the warmer water and circulating it through the building. That's the main heating system for the building. And we went through all the noisy building and all the machines and all the moisture retaining wheels that are working in various parts of the building as the air is changed to the outside, inside and outside, to make it healthy for people. We took students to the buildings to see how it worked. Because students had no idea they were living in this green building of the future, which was built up the same time as here at the math school. So I really would urge you, as you students start learning about how the systems work, to think about either doing energy tours of your own building. It's such a wonderful example of how you can build your house. I've built a solar heated house and never had a furnace in 1980. When we can do this, and this is the way forward, that's the most affordable and the best for the air and atmosphere. So I just encourage. There also was a whole student climate conference last year. I don't know if it's going to happen again, but students from, I think Math was invited. I don't know if some of you students came, but 6 or more students from that era went up to Augusta, and there were lots of students learning about climate action activities. So you're part of a new movement forward, and it's exciting to be able to do it from the building. And remember, you should be able to use your computer, your cell phone to pay attention to how much energy is the building making today. We've got a dashboard which needs to be worked on that's supposed to reveal that information. Canvas students get it all the time. They input from their two things that they have there: their solar collector and their wind machine. And they watch it, monitor it daily to get to know what they're receiving. But these are opportunities that we could develop in our schools too.
Nice. Yeah, I think we're done talking. I would like to say we've changed our motto from giving hope to being determined. I think hope isn't enough anymore. I think we need to be determined. But are there any questions or actually what I would rather ask, and I'm sure Jackson feels is how many of you guys can see, or if you have ideas, how many of you guys can see ways that we can engage young people in what we're already doing in the communities? Go ahead.
I'm just interested to bring this back to the classroom, with students about where the places that we see change and where we don't focus on. And just like we spoke about, turning it over to the state, do it sort of action.
And you guys have a lot of expertise here too, because you've got a community that's on board. You've got teachers who have already kind of like tackled the whole climate action plan. Yeah, I just said, what ideas from you guys have about how we can work together with, what she said?
Well, yeah.
Oh, she said she'd like to bring it back to the classroom and to see what the students would be interested in trying to tackle. Is that accurate?
That's perfect.
Okay.
Hi, okay, this is like a really big shout out to Baker and Bunker. Baker is this one, Bunker is not here right now, but
For the teachers.
but this is like a community that was built off of like trust. And like even now they brought us here at the midterm and we're gonna go summarize it, which is just showing us like how to like memorize things and like just telling us how important like what's going on.
I'm very proud of you guys for being here.
Me too. It is so nice to see so many young people here. It's amazing. Kudos to all of you. Go ahead.
I just have been, part of the talks of, what can BAC do to like this governmental level to be a breeder and, city, et cetera. And there's a lot of like town input sessions that like people want to organize and all that, like, get survey feedback and just hearing about, how you had a high school class literally lead those discussions, that's a huge like capacity add to the town if a high school class was able to take that on. So I think that's a very exciting opportunity for Beth if folks like you are interested in really helping the town get stuff done.
Yeah, I was kind of curious about the sharing of best practices. And for instance, you have the example of Kennebunkport, and that problem down there is not unique to Kennebunkport. And you said your organization works locally throughout Maine, throughout the country, throughout the world. I mean, how do we go about making sure that the information that comes out of various studies in various locations becomes common knowledge? And instead of reinventing the wheel, take what you learn here, transpose it over there, and make it a more efficient process.
Yeah, I hear you. I mean, I think communication is the biggest issue that we all face, right? We are all working in kind of silos and trying to figure out how do we break down those barriers. I think you're going to get a biased opinion from me in that I believe education is the beginning of that. I believe that if we're having this taught in all of our classes across disciplines, they're doing all becoming common knowledge. It's becoming common knowledge for your educators. It's becoming common knowledge for your students. They pass that on to their parents, and that way we have a little bit more knowledge base. So I think education is a huge place to start. I mean, UN has already said that education is the #1 way to solve the climate change problem. So education, but I also think it comes down to, all the levels that we have right now of government, from the top down. It's sort of like everybody has their own departments and their own places for information. Somehow we need to be having a resource that everybody can log into. And I don't think that problem's been solved. That was one of the things that got brought up in those community conversations is how could we start some kind of something online where we can house all of these pieces of information so that people know what legislation is coming and people know what's happening. But honestly, I think education and just being engaged, paying attention, but I don't know that there is a warehouse for this. I think the towns are really good about looking to other communities. I know TNC does a ton of stuff, and Nature Conservancy does a ton of stuff within the state of Maine to build resiliency in the communities. We're doing a lot of things with education. So there's a lot of us working. It's a matter of figuring out how we can all work in sync. And that hasn't happened yet, but I think the more that I do think this is all going to be from the grassroots up in many, many ways. I think our communities are going to have to become resilient with what we know and ourselves. And so I think as that starts to build, I think those communications will start happening. But I don't have a perfect answer.
Well, I have a bit of an addition. I mean, I totally agree with the education part and in terms of like sharing information. NYCJ launched a new program last fall. We call it our Youth Climate Justice Network. This is like a monthly virtual call we do, and it's usually a presentation on a certain topic. We hear about what's going on in people's communities, what's going on at the state legislature in Augusta, what's worth paying attention to, sharing events, resources, and just connecting as youth activists. And so that's a space we created because we saw the need for something like that. Is because people were having conversations in silos. Information wasn't always getting to who it needed to get to. But we wanted to have that space for people to connect and uplift each other. And so that is a monthly call, and it's open to anyone under 30.
We also, just so you know, these slides are all linked to resources, and there's there's more slides that have like videos and things like that were student made. So if this gets sent out, everybody will have access to all of those links. Any other ideas or thoughts?
Sorry, I just thought maybe Jackson could talk about the current legislative session that just came, just started again this January, and the power of testimony and can people who are, in high school submit written testimony in bills? And are there some priority bills that maybe Climate Justice is advocating for?
Yeah, it's a great question. Anybody can submit testimony, whether you write it and submit it online, whether you go in person to speak before legislators, also do it over Zoom, which is really handy. I will say when a young person goes to speak before a bunch of legislators, they are always pleasantly surprised because it is not who they are used to hearing from. And so it usually puts a smile on some of the faces, and that is the kind of power that young people have in spaces like the state legislature. In terms of priorities of NYCJ, we're advocating a lot this year for Wabanaki sovereignty for the Wabanaki nations due to laws that were enacted over 40 years ago. The Wabanaki nations don't have access to some federal programs that other federally recognized tribes have access to. And so we're focused on a bill that would help restore their access to those programs, as well as make changes to few provisions of laws from that time period. We're also focused on another bill called the Climate Super Fund, and this is a way we hope to make big polluters pay for the climate damages they have caused in our state. And if that is successful, that money will be coming back to Maine and can be distributed to our communities for things like infrastructure projects for roads, bridges, railroads, causeways, but also to things like weatherization upgrades in public schools or municipal facilities. So those are, I would say, two of our top priorities for this year.
Another organization that is really that brings youth to Washington, D.C. and brings them to Augusta often is the Citizens Climate Lobby. It's nonpartisan, but it is about creating a carbon tax where the tax goes, it's at the source, the tax at the source of the pollution, and then a dividend goes back to the community or the citizens. So very much like Nova Scotia. So Nova Scotians get a check, probably $600, $700 every year from the source polluters. So the Citizens Climate Lobby has a whole youth education arm as well.
If you want to find out energy bills in the legislature that are coming up, you go to the Energy and Utilities Committee, and you can look through the names of the bills and what they're covering, and they'll tell you when the hearings are and that sort of thing. You could click on and read the actual bill online.
Also, Maine conservation voters will have a list too.
They will do some of the work for you and already.
Yeah, there's a lot of resources online to.
Yeah, or Natural Resource Council of Maine has some priorities that they're pushing.
Yeah.
Renewable energy.
And students can always write letters. It makes a huge difference. It really does.
Yeah, and NYCJ does provide a whole host of trainings, whether you're curious about how to write testimony or you want to learn how to present that to a legislative committee. We also do workshops like a legislative 101, so kind of an introduction to how the state legislature works and how it impacts you. Also do other things like how do you write a letter to the editor or an op-ed in your paper. So those are some more examples of workshops we offer.
Jackson, where is your office located and what are your other staff folks focusing on?
So we don't have a physical office. We are all kind of spread out across the state. So I do a lot of the advocacy and organizing work, and then the other few staff people on our team do community engagement and communications, social media work. And we are a grant-funded organization, so that's also a big part of, our staff's responsibility.
Yep.
Yeah.
You work in certain areas of Maine more than others along the coast?
I would say, yeah, southern and mid-coast Maine. We're trying to have more of a presence in central Maine, as well as down east and some more rural communities that can be harder to connect with. So those are kind of our goals moving forward.
Great.
Yeah.
Any other questions or ideas?
I just wanted to ask, thank you so much. There's so much there and amazing. You have an amazing website with incredible number of resources, but I'm sort of wondering how this is landed for you guys. Do you feel like this is an overwhelming issue and you don't feel like you know where to start? Or do you sense from this conversation that you could talk to your teachers or talk to one of these folks or access their websites and get engaged? Or how did this land for you? Yeah.
I mean, it is a lot to process, especially because we didn't really start talking about climate change until a week ago, maybe. And like everyone, I think everyone knew about it, but no one really knew what was causing it. Or I didn't really know what was causing it. I didn't know what I could do to stop it.
Right.
And like seeing that there's not just like what the people doing it, they use people doing it, and obviously people will be able to go into a field where they can work in it is kind of eye-opening, if that makes sense.
I think it's great. I know I was a pretty shy person in high school, and I think I would have, if I had heard this talk, I would have gone, well, I don't know how to get engaged. I'm only a sophomore in high school. But I think what I'm hearing from Leah is that young people's voices really do matter. And that if you can get yourself educated enough, more than just the loop of learning about climate change, and feel empowered by the readings that we do and working with people like Leah and Jackson, so I think that it's possible that you can really speak up and make a difference. And I know on the Climate Action Commission that I'm on, we would love to hear your concerns and love to hear your thoughts about climate change. And our meetings are all open, so you're all welcome to comment. Probably not a good time for you at school, but 4:30 on Thursdays once a month.
Well, we can make it another incentive for this one.
There you go.
Yeah, and Paula, if everybody's done, I can kind of close out and follow up on that. So I'm also a member of the Climate Action Commission, and I work at the Kennebec Land Fest. And so I figured some of you haven't heard us talk about Climate Action Commission, so I tell a little bit about some of the work we're doing. And so one thing that we've done that was mentioned before is we've made a climate action plan for the city. And so it has all sorts of different ways of thinking about how to cut emissions, how to increase the resilience of buildings and infrastructure, and how to support people, some that are more vulnerable, some that are less vulnerable, like how to lift up everybody while doing these things. And so there are a bunch of different sections of the plan. Could be kind of fun to look at. We're at the point right now as a commission where we're starting to figure out like how do we prioritize. So the plan was just made last year. And so now we're at a point where we have like 50 things in this plan that would be really cool for the city to do. And so we're trying to prioritize that. And so we're working on setting up a group is helping us create some metrics to do prioritization. And so we're going to work through that as a committee. It'd also be really potentially interesting if you guys wanted to look at some of those options for things that the city is thinking about doing and see what you think how they rank and how they can be prioritized. We'd be really happy if any of them are super exciting for you to figure out how to work with students more. Some other projects the Climate Action Commission is doing that are kind of focused on those things, cutting emissions and increasing resilience. One is a project called Leads, which is called window dressers. And so it helps to build window inserts, and they are basically just like pieces of wood with plastic on them that you can set in windows, and they just help hold the heat in your house, so it costs less to heat the house. And there's a community build each fall. People sign up to get these built. There's a small cost associated with it, or some people, depending on income levels, I think you can qualify for grants to get yours covered. But so either helping to build those or helping to, or getting them around town is something that we're trying to do more just to help make it cheaper and easier and use less fuel to heat houses. We have this climate conversation series of lectures. So we have our talk about once a month. Our next talk a month from now it's kind of be like a community read, and we'll have an author come and talk about the book. The book is called The Story of CO2 is the Story of Everything, I think. And so it's a nonfiction book that just recently came out. Really excited for the author to come and to learn more about that. The next talk is Envision Resilience. That one's going to be really neat. There's a group of, or there are college students from 3 or 4 different colleges that have been working on design projects, looking at that and being like, how could we, like, what are some really, some of them are engineers, some of them are architects, some of them are communications people, some of them do design. And so they're like, as a part of their college classes, looking at that and doing some brainstorming of how could that be more climate resilience? What are some images? They're making videos and things. And so they'll be sharing some of what they created at that conversation 2 months from now. 3 months from now, I think there'll be a talk on emerald ash borer, an invasive insect that is causing big problems for ash trees. And we might have, during spring into summer last year, we tried to have like a neat electric equipment day where you could like use things that are typically gas powered and see like what is electric chainsaw like, what is a electric lawnmower, and just it'll probably be down near the bridge park.
Snowboat.
Yes. One of another thing I wanted to share, this is with my Kelp hat on. We are currently doing some hiring for summer staff, and that I think you might need to be 18 for the positions because of the level of the job. 2 are really kind of science-based, 2 are really trail-based, kind of helping with trail building, and 1 is kind of education and engaging youth. And so if there are any interest in those, they're posted on our website, or I can share them with your teachers. Anything else, Climate Action Commission, that would be helpful to mention?
I would just say, I'm Rod Melanson with the City of Bath. So if there are connections with the school here that want to get connected with the city, one thing that wasn't mentioned in all of the big topic discussions is you have these local folks that have introduced themselves. Everybody from the Climate Commission, raise your hand. So you have local folks here, and then you have your city councilors as well. And if that's something I can help guide anybody with, any questions, to get involved locally and make impacts locally. So I'll be your person.
There are some really cool city councilors in Bath too. I feel like they really enjoy hearing from you guys if you have any opinions on improving Bath. So thank you everyone for coming. Thank you so much to our presenters.
One more thing before you do leave, and